So we're going through a very interesting phase, I think. The global macro environment is shifting fundamentally. And the system that underpinned literally decades of stable capital flows is becoming more fragmented. And that fragmentation is making risk more interconnected and systemic. So we are navigating prolonged geopolitical tensions that is reshaping both trade and investment patterns, disruptions to energy supply chain with persistent inflationary consequences, shift in the global monetary cycle as central banks balance a growth versus price stability, and a reconfiguration of capital flows from traditional corridors. Are you good, Pablo? Yeah, great. So far this year, the US-Iran war has obviously been the decisive external catalyst, not just for the JSE, but for global markets in general. So as a result, we are obviously experiencing, as we're all feeling it personally, the higher oil prices. We are all feeling the pain of having to fill fuel in our cars, rand weakness, and then obviously the higher fuel cost. What does that mean for us as individuals is that it is raising inflation expectations, and even we can see it in our bills whenever we go into the supermarkets. And then, of course, we've seen the SARB shifting from easing path to an outright tightening, as we've seen in the last MPC, where the SARB has increased their rate by 25 bips. So the trajectory of the US rate and dollar are also very closely monitored because they impact us directly. Where the ZAR weakness, it impacts the foreign appetite for South African assets, and rates impact domestic financial and cyclical equities stock. Right, and before we talk about investor sentiment, I just wanted to highlight there has been a couple of great tailwinds that we have experienced as a country in the last couple of months, right? Obviously, SA exited the FATF grey list last year in October. S&P upgraded our rating in November 2025. And structural reforms in energy and logistics are delivering real results. February 2026 budget marks a turning point, I think, for South Africa, reflecting strengthened fiscal discipline and a more sustainable debt trajectory. Moody's recently revised its outlook to positive in May this year. And as well in May, S&P affirmed our rating, making SA one of the two G20 countries alongside Italy on a positive outlook. So we had a couple, I think Val also mentioned it. And whenever we're seeing investors and traveling overseas, we haven't seen like so much of optimism and question about South Africa. We actually have a very strong pipeline of clients that's looking to enter our market, which is really exciting for us. Right, so what does that mean in terms of investor sentiment? As I mentioned, that we started the year in a very, very strong footing, and all these tailwinds meant that we didn't only see local appetite, but we saw foreigners trying to enter our market, new participants coming, people interested to know what's happening politically, what's happening, from a macro level. So that has been really, really positive. Furthermore, obviously, earlier in the year, public guidance suggested that inflation could reach the 3% target earlier than expected, which is all positive. I mentioned the Fed budget, which reinforced the strong fiscal credibility. And I guess all of that meant that, that foreigners were pricing SA at a lower risk. Obviously, then the war happened in March, and that whole sentiment changed. As mentioned, the oil and inflation was higher. Market moved into literally a risk-off mode. In South Africa, we are one of the most liquid emerging countries, which is great. But whenever there's risk-off, we feel it first and foremost, and quite brutally. And we have all experienced that sell-off as soon as the war happened in March. The amount of volatility that we've seen, the amount of trading activity, which was, the highest that we have experienced, just reflect that strong, risk-off that we've seen globally. Right, so just what does that mean in terms of market performance? As mentioned, I think if we have to break this year, we can say that we have seen this year as three distinct phases. As I mentioned early in the year, between January and February, we had all these very, very good tailwinds helping our market, and we've seen it. We've seen record volume trading even before the war. And actually, our all-share index reached an all-time high end of January this year. And that was also on the back of the precious metal rallying, commodity rallying. The budget as well helped, and that's it was really positive. The second phase was obviously the start of the war, March, the shock, and it just drove volatility globally. And as I mentioned, it really it was seen in our market. However, the important thing to mention is even though we saw record volumes going through the market, our system was resilient. We never have any failovers. We were able to cope with this heightened and all-time highs. Just to give you some sense, we used to see messaging about 10,000 messages, and that escalated to 60,000 messages in a minute. And we were able to cope with such, heightened volatility, which is quite amazing, I think. And as a result of the war, obviously, we retreated from our all-time high of about 120,000 to about 102 by mid-March, as there was global risk aversion. And us being the most liquid EM, we really felt it. And then the third stage that we are currently at, April to May, was just a little bit of our market trading sideways. I think there was a bit of fatigue, from news, from headlines. People didn't know what to make of it. Is there a truce? Is there, an agreement or not? And all the traders that we spoke to, they were like, that's it. We can't manage risk like that. So people decided to keep on the side and wait for some sort of direction or firm guidance in terms of what was going to happen. And obviously we had the hike in May, which really kept investors selective about where they're going to be putting their capital flow without a full-on risk aversion. In terms of performance, I think resources has been obviously the outperforming sector. Gold miners has benefited from safe haven and from firmer gold prices. There was some day where there was just general risk off, and even gold got heavily sold. And that's something that is quite, not usually what you would expect, because gold is traditionally seen as a safe haven. But in this current environment, and that's what I said, we are literally entering a new phase. You are seeing all these dynamics being broken, market dynamics being broken. So, but still, it still has performed very well. And I think if we have to look from an SA Inc., financial has been the better domestic underpin due to, helped by, they've had very strong earnings in general banks. The Fed budget helps stabilizing their profile, and the Moody's move in May to raise our outlook all supported that narrative. So, and I think I've touched these couple of points. In terms of capital flows, so by the end of May, total value traded was about 3.4 trillion versus 2.7 trillion last year. And average daily value, this basically tracks how much trades on an average day, and that is our gauge, if you want, of the liquidity of our market, the appetite, etc. So that was up strongly year on year, 26%, currently around 33 billion per day, which means that, even though there is volatility, yes, there is risk off, etc., but our market remains liquid and, and transparent with active institutional flows. Just to mention, one thing that we do track quite closely is the offshore flow. And even though it might look quite negative, where we are seeing net selling of about 40 billion, I always like to, not defend that number, but just to say that there are different nuances there, because these numbers include dual-listed counters that trade in our market. And we all know that, it is flawed, because what happens is that banks will source liquidity for the buy side, for the end clients in the offshore market, and then they will convert that into the South African line. So the selling that we see in this dual is actually driven by buying, So I always like to put that with that just to give people a broader, perspective of what actually happens in those numbers, and that's why this number can potentially be flawed.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So when you're looking at your foreign flows, right, you're just checking how much foreigners are selling. But if I am a Coronation and it's after hours, I go to JP Morgan to source liquidity in Anglo American, in the London markets, or I could have been buying throughout the day, but I still want to carry on after hours. So they will carry on, buying the stocks, but when they convert it, it's seen as foreign selling. So that's why it flows. And actually, if you look at that number, the one thing that we like to do is to take out the dual names from that stats. Then it reflects a totally different picture. Yeah. So moving on to SA bond market, I think very, very similar theme where we have seen, all the macro positivity has, we have seen that asset class really benefiting from that. Lower inflation, a stronger fiscus, a stronger rand, confidence, etc. And we have seen very strong demand for the bonds from foreigners as well as locals. And it just contributed to a broad-based rally in the early part of the year. And of course, this all reversed in March following the war and again, increasing gold prices. It triggered the risk of weakening of the rand and inflation not looking so good anymore. And this impacts the bond segment directly. So what we're seeing currently that the market condition has kind of stabilized, but overall sentiment has definitely shifted to a more cautionary outlook, whereby investors are really looking at what's happening to inflation, and are we going to have how many more of hikes we could potentially be having, et cetera, et cetera. So that asset class has been heavily hit as well. And I think Val touched a little bit on that one. Moving into our primary market performance so far, this is just, primary market is basically looking at our, issuer segment. So what I chatted before is obviously the secondary market activity. This is basically saying, okay, how many listings have we attracted, etc. How much of capital were we able to raise? So far this year, we've seen 2 new listings in line with what we've seen last year. Val mentioned the Canal Plus, the other one was IMA. And in terms of secondary capital raise, about under 7 billion year to date, which is more than double of what we've seen in the same period last year. So that's been very positive. The largest capital raise was actually done by Vukile Property Fund, securing a total of 2.8 billion, positioning the real estate sector as the industry with the largest capital raise so far this year. And the South African listed real estate sector entered 2026 with very strong momentum, underpinned by improving fundamentals, renewed access to capital markets, and strategic allocations of a clean base. I think that was what we've seen in the recent activity. And market cap as well increased very, very solidly. We've seen a 23% increase so far in terms of the total market cap of all our listed JSE share. Last year, we were 19.9 trillion at the end of May, and I think we're currently standing at almost 25 trillion. I always like to round up that number. And one segment to really highlight that has been a very strong performance is our ETF segment. We have seen in the last couple of years, an increase in listing in that segment, and we strongly believe that it is still one of the segment that has potential to keep increasing. So 15 new listing in ETF listed this year. And the one piece that is like the flavor of the year, if I can mention, is the actively managed ETF. So these are, if you want to call it, kind of listed CISs. So it's before we used to have ETF that's tracking passive ETF. That will track a top 40 index, for example, or that will track like a gold. So these actively managed ETF got like an active mandate to it. So it's quite cool, and I guess it just improves access to retailers. It it improves visibility, transparency as an end user and retail. So that's why I think there is great potential in that one. And then, in addition, an AM ETF issuer recently wrapped their top performing retirement portfolios out of that umbrella fund into an ETF. I think we've all seen it in the media. That was Easy Equities under their RISE portfolio. And warrants and structured products have also grown significantly, just showing an increase in demand or appetite for capital protection and offshore exposure that these types of instruments offer. And just to summarize, I think for me the key takeaway is that we represent. I think if we have to look at ourselves globally, we still have a lot of value. Yes, there is I think we're all seeing the AI boom. We all know about it. We've heard actually Korea is down quite a lot this week, but we have seen the Korean market and the Taiwan market being the flavor of the year. But us as South Africa, being a strong commodity, we think we have a very strong place within a global portfolio where we have the diversification. We can't compete with the semiconductors type of market, but we do believe that we have value to offer in terms of diversification. And yes, there's all this war happening and inflation, oil, etc., etc. But we do think that we have a very strong value proposition in terms of our global positioning within a global portfolio.